approaching 8:05, so thank you for getting those introductions going in the chat. And I am Saira Zuberi, and I am just finding my notes. All right, so welcome everybody. As I said, I'm Saira Zuberi. I'm a member of the SGP Startup Board, and I lead the communications function. I'm currently based in Toronto as a settler on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation in the settler state of Canada. And before we begin this Gender Café, I want to quickly introduce the Society of Gender Professionals for anyone who isn't already familiar with SGP. We're a global association of gender practitioners, academics, and activists that are dedicated to promoting feminist action and applied research and raising the profile of gender expertise around the world. On the screen, you can see our mission, which includes fostering member collaboration, network building, mentoring, and leadership development in order to advance gender justice. Next slide. We have 275 registered members currently, and that's about 1 year after we launched the current membership system. That membership system is based on a dues scale that it's scaled to the local cost of a meal. So it's basically as accessible as it possibly can be. Even though SGP is a fairly young network, it's less than 3 years old, we do have a global network of over 10,000 gross contacts through our emails and various social media channels and newsletter. And you can visit the website at www.genderprofessionals.org to learn more or to join the association, and we'll give you all the contacts at the end, and you'll also receive all the materials relating to the Gender Café afterwards if you've registered. Next slide. So one of SGP's areas of focus is producing and sharing applied gender research. And one way that we help to disseminate feminist action research is through these gender cafes that we hold every few months. Next slide. So before I introduce our moderator for today, I'm just going to quickly explain the format of today's Gender Café. So right now we're all in the same Zoom room. After we hear from our moderator and today's panelists sharing their short presentations, we're going to break out into smaller groups in separate rooms. So the only thing you need to do is click on the blue button that says Join Breakout Room when it comes up on the screen. And before we return to this main Zoom room again, there's going to be a timer on your screen that you see, and then you'll be brought back to the main room automatically. Next slide. So we're going to begin, and I'll start off by introducing our moderator, who will then lead the discussion. So Melissa McLean was a member of the Women's Leadership Pathways project that was carried out in the Asia Pacific region. She was part of the research support team. Her areas of expertise include feminist approaches to advancing gender equality and women's empowerment, especially in the areas of governance, civic participation, and social development. So please take it away, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Saira, for that introduction and telling us a bit about the SGP. I'm super excited to be here and to have so many people joining us from so many different places. It looks like a really global group, which is really wonderful. It's great to see the interest in this topic. And I'm really looking forward to this chance to share and exchange experiences with everybody about what it means to do feminist collaborative research in a global North-South context, and so that we can talk and think together about, what that means, what makes it challenging, what makes it worth doing, and what it requires from the different partners involved. So for me and the panelists that you're going to be hearing from, our thinking on this issue is really growing out of a specific experience, which was our participation over about 3 years recently in the Women's Leadership Pathways Research Project, as Sarah mentioned. And so before I turn this over to the panelists, I just want to briefly provide some background about that project. So the Women's Leadership Pathways Research Project, which is, we call it the WLP project, so I'll probably say that, was part of a broader cooperation program that was managed by the International Women's Development Agency, IWDA, which, as you may know, is an Australian NGO. And I think we have some IWDA people with us. So welcome to them. It's really great to see that, and some people that are perhaps former IWDA staff that we know. And so we're happy to see your names in the chat and in the participant room. So this project was organized, the WLP research project was organized as part of the research evidence and learning part of the WAVE program. And WAVE is a program that supports and partners with NGOs and grassroots organizations that work on women's rights and empowerment in a number of countries in the Asia Pacific region. And you can see some of the faces of the research partners there. Not all of them are the same ones that stayed through until the end. There was some change, but the main partners in the project, as you can see there on the slide, were IWDA and the NGOs and grassroots organizations in 5 countries. So Cambodia, Myanmar, Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, and Timor-Leste. And there were originally, I think, 14 partner organizations, and in the end, I believe 11. I may have that wrong, but it's something like that. And then in addition, the consulting firm that I work for was contracted to provide technical research and coordination support. So specifically, Sonia Palmieri, who you'll hear from later, and I served as the research support team for the project. And the project was designed to learn about the leadership journeys of women in different economic, political, and social spheres in the 5 countries. So it was about their experiences and challenges and strategies and motivations and support systems. And it was very much a qualitative study. And the idea was to focus on individual women's stories and voices. And the project was optional for IWDA's WAVE partners, the partners in the broader program. And at an early stage, they discussed the research objectives and the theme and decided whether or not they wanted to participate. And those that did put forward one staff person, normally just one, as the researcher who would interact with the project. And then the project got underway, that is, formally, with a kickoff workshop in Bangkok in November 2017. And at that time, the research partners and Sonia and I, the research support team, and some IWDA staff met and got to know each other, talked over the research questions and the methodology. We also devoted time to capacity building on research and research methods, because for many of the partners, they had little or no formal research experience or training, and this was a first experience for them. And doing research really was not part of their ordinary job descriptions. So then everyone went home, and we roughly had about 18 to 24 months of data collection. And during that time, Sonia and I were in touch with all of the researchers in IWDA, providing various kinds of support and coordination. And then, and that's really glossing over a lot, I'm going to just race to the end and say, then the project finished up with another workshop in Bangkok last February, just before COVID-19 shut everything down. So it was kind of miraculous that we all had the chance to meet together again in Bangkok just before that became impossible. We were all extremely grateful for that, because it was a fabulous experience. And the workshop was a joint exercise to learn about data analysis and to do collective sense making and draw out some findings and conclusions in relation to our research questions. So that was great. But we also used that opportunity to reflect on the research process itself, because the project really changed and evolved from beginning to end. And we felt that there had been a lot of really valuable learning about what it meant and what it really required to do a project of this kind, with so many different partners and across global north-south divides, and with donor organizations and local partners, and some people who were designated as research experts, and others with expertise in their local contexts and field experience, and language differences, and all the different things that were involved, and the different power dynamics and operational issues and money issues and everything else that comes with it. So a lot of time and reflection actually happened at different moments across the project, including in the final workshop, on those challenges and the requirements, and about what makes a project really deserve labels like feminist and collaborative, and maybe even transformative. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Christina. So in the end, so this is just sort of, this slide is just indicating the change that the project underwent. You can sort of see the different descriptors that were used at the beginning, and then as we sort of came to grips with reality, some of those things changed a little bit. And in the end, the WLP partners have produced a really rich and wonderful research findings report, and that's going to be available soon from IWDA. And we're all really proud of that. So I would encourage you to look for it because it has a lot of really relevant insights about women's leadership that can be helpful for understanding leadership from the perspective of those women and how best to support them. But we really also felt that the process learning coming out of the project was almost equally valuable. And that's why we're here today, because we wanted to talk a bit about that and build on what we've learned with others who've had similar experiences or are interested in this kind of partnership. So basically, we want to ask, what did we learn from the WLP process? What do other people think about that? What have others learned from their similar processes? If we could have the next slide, I think it just has a kind of summary question on it. Yeah, basically, what we all want to ask is, what did we learn from this project about the value, the challenges, the requirements of working in collaborative partnerships for research in ways that are feminist, but also that are effective, that are good research, and that can maybe even have that transformative potential that we're all sort of seeking. So I'm now going to turn it over to the panelists with a bit of background so they can share some of their reflections from their own perspectives. We're first going to hear from a couple of the research partners and then from another member of the research support team afterwards. So we'll start with Chandi, who is joining us from Phnom Penh, where she is the incredibly dedicated and amazingly hardworking and energetic advocacy and networking manager for the NGO Gender and Development Cambodia. And we really appreciate her getting up and ready to talk with us so early in the morning. So it's all yours, Chandi. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Malaysia, for the very great introductions. Actually, the style is already gone because it's morning already in Cambodia. The sun is now up. So as Malaysia has mentioned earlier that the research have some challenges. So I just would like to highlight a few challenges that I and other partners of the WLP research experience so far. The first one is language and translation. As you know that because this is the cross-country research, so we use English language as the first language for communications. And from Myanmar to Cambodia, Papua New Guinea, those countries are not using like English directly as the first language. So when we design something, we have to think it in English first, and then think it again to translate it into Khmer language and Myanmar language, for example. Like, so right now, just an example in Cambodian, the Khmer language. So when we design it in English, the focus group discussion questions, the survey questions, everything is so perfect and feel like, oh, it's great. But then when we translate it into our local language, like Cambodian language, it's another layer of difficulty. And then we need to ask the participants who are Cambodian, then we have to translate it again in their own language again. For example, like we use the word leadership. So in English, we understand clearly like what leadership is and what does it mean. But then we translate it into Cambodian language and then translate into the local, like in the provincial language. When we ask the participant, she feels like we are asking about only political view, nothing about religious, nothing about economics. So this is one of the challenges. That's why a lot of ideas, a lot of data that I got from my research is mainly focused on the political views rather than the economic view or religious view. So this is the first challenge, and I can feel that other people also suffer the same thing when we try to translate it. Even there is a package to hire the professional translation, but it does not mean that those kind of words can translate into the ear of participant. So this is one of the challenges that I really challenge. The other thing is time pressure because. It's a longitude research from 2017 until like early 2020, as Malaysia have mentioned. That's long time. Sometimes it makes us a little bit pressure to identify our time to join with the research. So I need to keep myself inspiring all the time, especially looking at the research questions and the objective in order to tell myself that I need to go on with the research and see about the result of the research. And I also have my core work at the organizations, and it is very difficult to ask other people to assist me in order to collect the data or write the data in the language, in the English language, and send to facilitator like Malaysia and Sonia. The other challenge is access to the participant. In Cambodia, the context of the politics happened in 2017 until 2019. It was so hard to contact with women in the high-ranking level because of the political conflicts. So whenever, and I'm working for the NGO. So when I want to ask the high-ranking women in the government or in the politics, I need to issue a formal letter, stated every objective that I want to meet her. In this kind of things, it make me really frustrated with the procedure. And sometimes when we reach out them already, they said like they are busy and they can only meet me in 5 minutes. Like, how can we interview someone in 5 minutes? And then she asked me to interview via phone. And it is also difficult. We cannot just interview them via phone. So I try in different methods a lot of times, and until we can meet like each of the target participant that I want. But it ended up from like talking in half an hour to like 3 hours or 4 hours. This kind of thing happened, you know, like when a woman just want to have a company and share their story. So it's a very time consuming talking with them. But turn out now from the challenge that I share, like these three points, I'm going to talk about the benefits of joining this research, this kind of research. So the first benefit that I want to mention is the network. It's a very strong network right now that it was so hard to talk with them earlier, but after talking with them, like I mentioned, from half an hour to 4 hours, they become a best friend of me. So right now, it's the politicians, women politicians, or the people in that high ranking, those women, if they want to talk or share any challenge or any improvement that they want to share with anyone, they will just find me. And they will talk on phone. So some of the advocacy things that happen in Cambodia, policy view or stuff, we can just like work through them. So we got now, like my organization got a seat to talk with the government about gender policy, about like national action plan to end violence against women, these kind of things. We got it from the network that we interview from this research. And another thing is skill in asking questions. So I learned about skill of asking questions with them to see like, and reflecting to myself like whether I'm really using the feminist approach questions when I ask them the question, when I listen to them, when I observe them. So it make me really reflect to myself whether I'm using enough feminist approach. So this kind of thing is also, the research also is very helpful for me. Learning research skill here, I also gain a lot of knowledge skill, especially in data collection and analyze. Actually, I used to collect data, but because I normally depend on the assistant of my organization to write down the data, to just like summarize and everything. But for this research, I did it myself from the beginning until the end. So I learned the process easily and understandable. So I now can design the research that recently we just finished the research about unpaid care work and gender responsive budgeting in Cambodia. It's from the experience of WLP research as well. And the other benefits that I feel is the ownership of the research. So the WLP research gives me a lot of ownership that I can now understand what the research is about. So I'm so confident to present about the research result and take it as the advocacy message to advocate at the national level in Cambodia about women in leaderships. So these kind of things make me really proud of the WLP research result, as well as all the other researchers. So I would finish my presentation to here, and the next. So I would like to turn my next thing to Sonia. Sonia is the key coordinator of the research, and she's recognized as an expert in women's political leadership and participation with a special interest in gender-sensitive parliaments. And she's also a rising star in the research and also in our talking point. And I really love talking with her. So yeah, I would like to turn my to turn the stage to Sonia. Thank you.
Thank you, Chanya. I don't think anyone has ever introduced me as effusively and as positively as you just have. And I have to say, I'm just full of pride. And I know it sounds a little bit maternalistic, but I'm full of pride around what Chandi has talked about and the legacy that this project has had in her life. I'm just so pleased by that. Thank you very much. I actually don't want to talk just yet. I really just want to introduce a conversation that I had with one of our other partners who is based in the Solomon Islands. It's Camilla Batislaya. And Camilla unfortunately couldn't make it with us today, but I had the great pleasure of having a chat to her last week. So if our good slide person could press the little button, we'll listen to Camilla.
I think one of the things that also stood out for me during the process was the networking that after the connections that I made after, during, and also after the project. Well, it's complete now, I'm assuming.
Yes.
I've moved and I'm like, oh, okay, is it complete? Or yeah, so yeah, the connections as well as the networks that have been born out of this process. It has been, I'm just going to sigh because that's all I'm going to do right now. It's just an amazing, amazing experience.
Oh, it's so heartwarming, I think, to hear. And yeah, I think that's it is one of the greatest things about the project that well, first of all, I feel like I've learned so much, but I've learned so much from all of the people that I've met in the process. And it sounds like you've had that experience as well.
Yes.
And that those networks and those connections, they go on even after the project has finished. And so there's a real legacy there. I think that's fantastic. But tell me, Cami, were there any challenges in doing this project?
There were a few, and well, it's not so much of the actual. I think it's more like for me. I think in the data collection phase, I think it's actually going back and, like I mentioned earlier, like I had to go back and redo one of the survey participants' questions with the participant, and I think it's just being able to find a suitable time to get them. I think it's they were like, because a lot of the participants, they're very busy, very prominent leaders, women figures here in Solomon Islands. So it was just, they had busy schedules. So just being able to get a time on redoing, because this particular participant, she was really a busy person. So it was actually one of those days where I was just thinking, oh, how do I get her to sit down and actually do that? So I had to do a couple of calls and some run-ins to the office as well, just to get a time suitable for her. But that was the only thing that I found challenging with the data collection phase. Now with the sense-making phase, You know, I think for me, because I wasn't actually physically there when the workshop, took place.
Well, just explain that, Cami. We had a workshop in February in Bangkok, and because of COVID, Solomon Islands government had really kind of closed borders and kind of made it a bit more difficult to kind of move in and out of Solomons, even earlier than most countries. And so our amazing Solomon Islands participants weren't able to come to the workshop. So what did we do instead, Cami?
So we had a virtual workshop movement. But, you know, I am very thankful because it's better than just, you know, not even participating at all. And I think that was the only thing that made it a bit, you know, it made it a bit challenging because here, you know, the internet network is not, you know, up there, and you know we had a lot of challenges with just getting a site to just sit down and do the work, or just even sit in and you know be able to book a venue. That was one of the challenges that we had faced with the sense making. But I just wanted to mention as well, it was really interesting. That's why I'm just bummed that I wasn't even there, you know, there, because there were a lot of interesting data as well that was, you know, put in from the other sister organizations where we are partners. So, yeah, I think that's the only thing that was actually challenging. If I can remember and recall back to the project.
If I can just kind of also say, I think you and Janet rose to the challenge very well, because even though you weren't physically in the room, we knew you were there, and you still kind of participated in the whole and in the kinds of processes. But I'm really, it's great to hear your point that you didn't get to kind of interact and engage with the data that was brought up from all the other participants while we were there. Really important point. It was kind of like a one-way process for you, rather than a two-way process as it was for so many other people there. What do you think about the people that you interviewed or that Donna interviewed? Do you think that the research process had any value for them?
Oh man, this particular question, I thought about because after the project happened and the data collection phase, I was able to meet up with a lot of the participants, and I've become good friends with a good number of the participants as well. And they were one particular participant who I met the other day, and we were talking about the project, and she mentioned the word that she used was grateful, you know, and you know it really stuck, because she said you know in a country that's you know culturally orientated as Solomon Islands, it's just these little projects, you know, we might see them as insignificant. That's what she said, in a society that's really culturally orientated. But it's these types of projects that actually, you know, break the ice, you know. They actually make the way in. And she said that she's really grateful because, you know, coming from an island that, you know, the female, well, Solomon Islands on a bigger scale is the same. Women are minorities, but coming from an island that's really, really deeply culturally orientated, and women are, you know, seen as lesser than the opposite sex. She mentioned that, you know, this is one way that she's going to contribute back to, you know, encouraging the women, the young women back in her village, in her island, not to give up, you know, not to, and to see things in a different light, as opposed to just being able to, you know, do their, you know, cultural duties, to see, you know, that, you know, it's not something that is just there. It's, you know, life is just like that just giving to them. But, you know, there's other ways of living. And I'm speaking because of some rural places in Solomon Islands. That's the mindset, and that's what she said. She's really grateful for the project because it's a way, step forward to breaking the ice, especially for her people back in her island. Just to know that they can be more and they can overcome whatever barriers there is. So yeah, that's what one of the participants mentioned to me just the other day. I met her. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. You've got to feel proud to be part of a project that does that.
I am.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all very proud. I think, and I think just listening to both Chandi and Camilla this morning, I also think it's a testament to the partner's persistence. We can hear from Chandi's, kind of going back, calling back, not saying, no, I just want to talk to you for 5 minutes. Actually, I do want to have the face-to-face. I don't want to call on the phone. I want to see you and I want to talk to you. I want to hear your story. And the persistence that is involved in kind of continuing a project like this, particularly over 3 years, is really significant. And I also just need to explain, Camilla took on the role after someone else had started with the women's rights action movement of the Solomon Islands, which is a key partner, which has done amazing work in the Solomon Islands. And I think there's so much to be proud of, but I think also as a consequence of some of the skills that she learnt through this process, she's actually now an article clerk with a law firm in the Solomon Islands in Honiara. So when I saw her, she was in an office with, all these books behind her, looking incredibly professional. So like the kind of the skilling up that's happened as well is, I think, really quite significant. So really, really amazing. I wanted to just reflect on the process as well. As Melissa said, over 3 years, there was ample opportunity for us to reflect. And I think also because of the kind of the relationship that we had, always kind of trying to touch base and see what was working, what was not working. And I think what's important in that process is to kind of realize that even if we look at the process and say, well, we might not be achieving what we want, and some of that is about us and some of that is about the way the project is structured, that's not a bad thing. But really, Melissa and I have kind of put together some of these thoughts in a journal article that we're very grateful is about to be published. But we've really argued that the hallmark of a feminist collaborative process has to be reflection, constant reflection and revision, not only in relation to what we find in the data, but the way we do that research process. And what we thought was quite interesting is that we realized, perhaps too late, that what we were doing was teaching research as well as supporting the research. And I'm not suggesting that we didn't enjoy that process. I think we did. But in kind of supporting a research process, we also had to do some teaching of that. And so what was interesting for us was to benchmark that teaching against feminist theory. And to do that, we looked at some of the previous literature, and it was clear that there are key tenets of feminist pedagogy, of teaching theory, that we could use to assess our contribution to that process. And some of those things are, well, was there a kind of an equality in the teacher-student relationships, and how did we understand the teachers and the students? Was there empowerment of the students? Was there a sense of us building a community? Did we privilege individual voice and respect diversity of personal experience? And did we, as teachers, encourage a challenging of traditional views? in the interest of time, because I think we really do want to kind of hear from the participants who are here, I just want to say that a real challenge for us, I think, was in the fostering of a very much needed group dynamic, rather than it being a relationship, for example, between me and Cami and between Melissa and Chandi, which is how we kind of structured the project. And while we had a Facebook group page, I'm sure Chandi will also attest to the fact that that wasn't always a space of a community. And some of that was hard because of language, some of that was hard because of, you know, again, because it was a 3-year project and people were coming in and out and doing things at different times. But if we want to build a really strong community, which I think is a really important part of this process, then maybe having it structured across 5 countries is maybe not the best way to do that. So I guess it's about understanding what the real objectives are. And I think, as Melissa has said, we really valued the process. And so we would like to see more emphasis and investment in doing this kind of process, in doing this kind of research for the process, not necessarily for the result. And as Melissa said, there is going to be a report, and we're all very proud of that because it is really significant. And it does raise the voices of the women that Chandi and Camilla and all the rest of the participants interview. But this process has done a lot for people like Chandi and Camilla, and again, our research participants. So that I think is worthy of its own space. And I think I'll stop there.
Well, thank you so much, Sonia and Chandi and Cami. Although she's not here, I'm feeling really grateful that she was able to have her her intervention as well, because I know it was logistically a little bit difficult to organize, but she took the trouble to make it happen with Sonia's help as well. So that was fantastic. So yeah, we do want to make sure that everybody has a chance to participate. So what we're going to do now is follow from those contributions into, I guess we have maybe 25 minutes or so for breakout sessions. And we want to use this time to take the discussion further with those of you who've joined us based on your experiences and your ideas and your reactions to what you've heard. And I expect that you'll probably all be coming at this from different angles. And like I said at the beginning, there seems to be a really great diversity of participation here, people coming from different places and sort of institutional positions and countries, et cetera. So I think depending on your experience or location or what kind of role you might have played or expect to play in a research initiative like the ones we've been talking about or other types of partnerships, you'll have a different point of view. And I hope everyone's going to feel comfortable to share and join in and share their ideas so that we can benefit from that full range of perspectives. So we've come up with 3 sort of suggested questions to get the discussion started, one for each of 3 breakout groups. And if we can have the next slide, I think we can take a look at them. So these are, you know, simple questions that try to hone in on some key points. In a general sense, it seems to me there's kind of 2 large sets of questions that overlap and link very much in research partnerships and collaborations of the kind we're talking about. And one set is sort of logistical and has to do with questions of resources and, like Chandi was saying, language and translation and you know, internet connectivity and all these kinds of issues, you know, fundamentally money really. And another set has to do with kind of methodological questions and reflection on the process, but also on the research itself. But these 2 things obviously connect, and they connect because of the structural conditions that we're doing this kind of research in, and the whole reality of the global north-south divide and the differences that exist in terms of power and resources and access to expertise and you know, legitimation of assumptions about how research is done in different places. So those are kind of all complex questions. We've tried to find 3 fairly simple, straightforward ways to get at some of them. So the first question, what makes a research partnership collaborative, feminist, and successful? So like, what are the basic conditions? What are the requirements that mean that we can say with some confidence that this is actually collaborative and it's actually feminist? And, you know, what does that really mean? What are some of the challenges of research partnerships like this, or partnerships more broadly perhaps? And how have you managed them? If you've had similar experiences, what kind of challenges have you experienced? How did you address them? How could they be addressed? And then thirdly, what opportunities for change or innovation, like in our thinking or methodologies or processes, emerge from these kinds of processes? And, you know, do we end up having something that's different from kind of business as usual for research that can emerge out of these kinds of collaborations? So those are the 3 questions. And you're going to now see, if I've got this right, a message on your screen that's going to tell you to go to a breakout room. And then you'll find one of either Chandi, me, or Sonia in your breakout group, and we'll have a great discussion. And then when the time is up, we're going to be magically transported back to sort of wrap things up. I think I've got that right. So I think that's what's going to happen next. Yeah. All right. So we'll see you all in the breakout rooms and then back here. Is that right? Everyone's returned from there. I can't tell how many people are here with us. Am I?
About 16. It looks like a couple people had to leave early. They came into our little lobby space and were very grateful and then departed.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll just, we just have like a few minutes left. So I don't think we really have time to, you know, hear back from every group exactly what was said. I don't know if anybody has any burning points that came out of their small group discussions. I know that the next step here is going to be that there'll be a summary put together of the discussions and shared with everybody who participated. So the discussions are not going to be lost. They'll be put into a summary form that everyone will be able to share. But maybe we could just hear like a, you know, the sort of 30-second highlights version from each group before we depart. Does that sound all right? Yeah. Okay. So who was, well, actually, we were the first question in my group. So I guess we could go in order. Our question was, what makes a research partnership collaborative, feminist, and successful? We were talking about what were the criteria. I don't know if anybody from my group would like to just say a couple of words about what we concluded. Or if you want me to summarize. Go ahead, Syra, you look like you could do it.
I'm happy to do it if nobody else will volunteer. I think we've got Krista and Shreya still. Yeah. Person had to leave early. Okay, so I think a key element is just participation and voice, and subjects being engaged in the research and not only being the subjects of the research. So at all stages having that perspective included. Another aspect that was important was transparency and understanding, you know, the different resources and capacities, and you know what the demands will be of different people. You know, I think one of the WLP experiences was that there was a much greater demand on the participants who, you know, also had their day jobs and everything else to do, and that was unexpected or unplanned for to some level. And also another important aspect is that the resourcing, you know, as much as possible and as much as feasible, needs to be equitable in the sense that there shouldn't be, you know, lower expectations and lesser resources for this local partner versus, you know, the funder or the larger northern NGO, or rather than, you know, creating or intensifying inequalities already existent. Have I missed a key point?
Well, not to my ears, Syra, but I think that sounded good. I don't know if Kristen had anything to add, or yeah. So maybe we could just move on to the next group, who I think that was with you, Chandi, and I don't know if anybody there, you, Chandi, or someone else wanted to give us the highlight of what came out of your discussion about challenges and how they can be managed or have been managed.
Yeah, so I'm Kelly. Hi. So we talked a lot about ways to work with power dynamics between researchers as well as with participants, and a lot of the challenges surrounding those power dynamics that maybe don't even get talked about, how long it takes to work with those power dynamics, recognize what they are, what they look like, and a lot of conversation surrounding how to start to really break down or rethink, reconfigure, and deal with the power dynamics. And so we talked about the opportunity within smaller projects to be able to deal with that. We talked because we're working like in smaller groups, we're talking about here large, donor organization situations, but even within smaller research opportunities to be able to start to work on those power dynamics as a reflective process between researchers and participants, and to how challenging it is because there are participant power dynamics as well. So the many, many layers of power dynamics and kind of digging through those and how long of a process that is. And we kept trying to say, like, what are some solutions? And we'd be like, we have a lot of like concerns, a lot of experiences, and a couple of solutions maybe, but like it's quite a process. And so, we talked about a couple of organizations and how they handle different methodology. And then one really interesting point for me too was like feminist theory and where that feminist theory is coming from, like whose feminist theory. And then the problem of feminism within the Cambodian context, the problem of the word, the translation of the word, and what that means for participants, right? And what that means for who participates in feminist research because of the late information regarding the word itself. Did I miss anything? We talked about a lot of stuff.
Great. So it sounds like you've got, identifying the challenges is the first step towards identifying the solutions. So I think you can be forgiven for just delving deeply into all that complex stuff on challenges. Sounds like it was a really terrific discussion, very rich. And then we had one more breakout group, which was opportunities for change or innovation emerging from these processes. I don't know if there was somebody who wanted to give us the headline version of that discussion as well.
So we had a very fruitful discussion that I feel went a bit off script. So in terms of answering to the question per se, I don't have a lot, although it's very interesting. I think the opportunities for change and innovation, and they came out of the talk as well, is like the relevance of training people on the ground, of giving them new skills that they can utilize in the future. That was very salient. Also, the idea of creating the time and the resources to include the participants and what that might require. Maybe going to their own spaces versus bringing them to your space, and sort of those things. We also went a bit into the challenges and sort of like discuss how languages are such a challenge to work across, donors' expectations and how they sort of need to be flexible and trust the process with you, because the project changes as it goes, and if the donor is set on a particular expectation, then that might be a problem. Then we spoke about researchers sort of having their own agendas sometimes, and sort of having the need to actually create multiple products as they go for different audiences involved. So sort of like handle their own research expectations, but at the same time handle all the stakeholders like donors and the recipients of the programs themselves.
That sounds great. I think you can also, just like the others, can be forgiven for not coming up with all the solutions. I think that going off script a little is perfect. That's the nature of a conversation when it's a good one. So thank you for that. So, well, I'm going to hand back to my SGP SGP hosts, but just before I do, I'm just going to say thank you. I know that on behalf of myself and the panel, we're really honored to have been able to participate in this Gender Café, and with having people here to have these conversations with us. It's been a fantastic experience, so thank you. And I will turn it over to the SGP to wrap it up.
So, and we can just go ahead to the next slide at the end. So on the last slide, you'll see all the contact information for SGP and where you can follow us if you're not already engaged. And of course, we're going to be sharing all the notes and slides from this Gender Café with everybody who RSVP'd, and then it will be posted to the Gender Café section of the website. And you can see on the last slide how you can reach out to us or follow us. And we're really grateful to everybody for sharing your thoughts and your expertise. And that's something we look at as a collective good that we've built together. And we're expecting to announce the next Gender Café that's on the subject of virtual feminist mentorship in the next month or so. So keep an eye out, and we hope we'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody. And we have in the chat also a plug for one other event from Leah, who's the membership lead. So thank you very much for sharing that. And yes, thank you very much to our wonderful panelists and for all of the coordination efforts across all the time zones. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.